What can you think of a single dish that represents British food for you, and why? Sybil, can you?
Yes, I think this is a really difficult question because I've got like a book full of ideas of what I think are typically British. But I think I would have to go for a fool, like something like a gooseberry fool or rhubarb fool, partly because I just absolutely love it, but I think it's also quintessentially British. It's something that you don't really get anywhere else in the world. It's very simply produced. It depends on very high quality ingredients, otherwise it tastes like rubbish. And we love our puddings. So that would probably be my dish.
Okay. Shane, what do you think?
Such a hard question. I think for me it would be fish and chips. You know, we're a nation surrounded by water. We don't eat fish unless it's fried in batter. And rich and poor, we all go to the seaside or even in our towns and we all have fish and chips, and best eaten, you know, with the salty air in there. So absolutely fish and chips for me.
There's probably a better answer out there, but I think kedgeree sums it up for me. Brings in the history of Britain, and smoked fish from Scotland. It was common to me growing up, and yeah, it just makes sense.
I like the fact it has a touch of the Indian heritage in there as well. So yeah, nice touch. Jay, what do you reckon?
I was thinking about this, and one of the things you and I have learnt as we've done the kitchen cabinet around the country is there's one subject that people argue about in every region, and it's stew. And they all have different names for it. It's Monmouth stew, it's Lancashire hot pot, it's lobscouse, it's Irish stew, and there are myriad names for it. They're all the same. Basically, they're all the same. Except they're all different because everybody argues over the exact recipe for what is a lobscouse or a Lancashire hot pot or an Irish stew or a Monmouth stew.
Okay, so let's deal first with the historical reputation of English food. It was pretty dire.
Because actually in the late 80s we had the first big wave of people taking over farms again. So after the Second World War, largely men were farming here in the UK and North America. Globally they're women, but here in the UK it was men. And they came back from the battlefields and they took on their farms. And if you add 40 years on to those young men, they're talking about the late 60s and 70s. So there was a huge change in farms then. And actually really interesting, we're seeing that now as well. So there's a new wave. So I think actually it's going to be really interesting in the next 5 years, seeing where food is, because farms again en masse are changing hands. Today the average age of a farm is 68, so you can say in the next 10 years every farm's going to change hands. And you couple that change of farms with falling income, and that came as the supermarkets became more and more dominant. And they were looking for extra income. So you got new people coming in, looking in different ways. Very often perhaps had gone to university, studied marketing and other new things, which were new disciplines then. And they came with these new skills. And they were also looking at the bottom line falling and thinking, how can I do that? So I think it's very much in two ways. You're absolutely right, Jay. The restaurant scene was burgeoning. There was the reviews. There was that interest there. But actually it needed feeding. You know, the fire was burning, but you need fuel for that fire.
And the farm shops
And
as
the
well.
farm shops. Well,
yes.
Farm shops, again, we're coming from, I can't make enough money for the farm. It's been in my family for generations and generations. What on earth do I do? Well, I can sell that direct. And again, using those skills, using that produce.
Yeah.
So can we think of individuals, people who have helped this renaissance along, triggered it, been useful or influential?
I think Fergus does have to get a nod, Fergus Henderson, but it's almost like he's exported something. You can go around the world and you'll find restaurants filled with very intense tattooed men who have never actually been to St. John. But they've got the book and some of the pages are stuck together. And they're kind of intense about it. And there's always a version of that bone marrow dish on their menu. And it's kind of like a half-remembered echo of a dream of it. Actually, one very funny thing, I do have to tell you this. So Fergus, St. John, Englishness, all of that. And I once asked him, I said, so where did that bone marrow dish come from? Where did you come up with that idea? And he said, well, there was about a week when they couldn't get into the kitchen. They hadn't been able to start the restaurant. And so he was wandering around and he went to the Everyman in Hampstead with the Dirty Foodie Brigade in their Macs to see La Grande Bouffe, a film made by an Italian involving a lot of Frenchmen. And in the middle of La Grande Bouffe, during the banquet where they're eating themselves to death, they served themselves bone marrow with toast and a parsley salad. And he said, I'll have that one. That's where that came from. When people say what caused the change, the revolution, the renaissance in food in Britain, I gird my loins and say, wait for it, this is not me being an apologist for them, but it belongs to 3 people. Margaret Thatcher, Nigel Lawson, and Rupert Murdoch. And it dates from about 86, 87.
Right.
Now, obviously, there were other things going on. We can talk about George Perry Smith at the Hole in the Wall in Bath. We can talk about Brian Sack and Francis Coulson at Sharrow Bay, and Joyce Molyneux at the Carved Angel, and all of those things, and all those the Box Tree in Ilkley, and all those marvellous, marvellous things. But here's what happens: you have Thatcherism, which basically creates a revolution in puritanical culture and says it's okay to spend money, which is then combined with Nigel Lawson's third budget, which produced an enormous ramping up in the money supply. Some of you are old enough will remember that when he cut, I think it was the top rate of personal tax to 40%, money just flowed into the economy. It was okay to spend it. We bought houses, we bought cars, we bought suits with big shoulders, and we rolled up the sleeves and looked like tossers. But food was the next thing. And then there was something else that happened at the same time. So that's Thatcher and Lawson, which is Rupert Murdoch takes on the print unions. And he does it for one particular reason, which is that he wants to bring in new tech. And he wins, 86, 87. And what he wins in doing so is the ability to print multiple sections. And if you talk to journalists from that age, they will say, we were suddenly presented with page after page we had to fill. And lo and behold, there was food waiting to fill it. If you look at the dates of when national newspapers hired restaurant critics, it's all 1986 and 87. It's always been a bit doubtful as to whether it was Paul Levy first on The Observer or Jonathan Meades on The Times, but they both turn up about 86, 87. Matthew Fort is 89 on Weekend Guardian. The Observer is about 1988. There weren't restaurant critics on national papers prior to that date.
I was speaking to an academic recently who's writing a book on the history of the grand tours from all the different European countries. We didn't just do it there, they did it back to us. And what I hadn't realised was for at least 2 centuries, people are writing in their Italian and French and German notebooks that they're going to England to taste the roast beef. And our assumption that we were the finest roasters of meat anywhere in the world and had been for centuries, I think it's a lovely idea. And it was there, it was clearly there.
It goes back to Roman times. I mean, that one of the, I don't know if this is true, but one of the stories is that the Romans invaded for the beef, which was actually from Scotland, which was herded down, and it was then actually sent off to play, and oysters, and these were major exports back to Rome. Yep. So we've always had incredible, and the other thing I was going to say was one of the theories behind British food is that the reason that our food is so simple is because we had very high quality ingredients and we didn't feel the need to cook them in all sorts of complicated ways to disguise what they actually were, which is what was implied by the French, that they created all these delicious sauces and things because they had to make something go a very long way.